you lovely folks out there. Welcome to Needle Drop Nation, where we, as Gen Xers, Nick Wood and I, Jod Baras, celebrate music through the eyes of Gen Xers. And it's basically a love letter to our youth. And today is a very special episode. We're focusing on the year 1965, a very important year. And the title for this episode is The Year the World Tilted. So much going on, right, Nick? So much going on. And it was basically a year that really brought awareness, that brought empowerment, and that literally brought a sense of expression as well as restlessness. And let's look and let's put a twist to that through music. Nick, let's talk about one of the things that, maybe, or share with us some of the things that you remember about 1965 from what you heard from family and in music.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Jody. Beautiful introduction, as always. Yes, 65 was an amazing year, like the pivotal year where the 60s started to grow up and explore, particularly in the music realm, lots of different genres, and so it was a very exciting time. Of course, we weren't alive at this time, but because we're Gen Xers, Gen X started in 65, some of you will have been born in 65. And what we said last week is true, is that we might not have been alive in 65, but the music, that music we grew up with in our teens, even before our teens, we grew up with this music, and it's shaped the music that we have even today. And that's one of the reasons I love chatting to you about music, particularly this era, is because we can see how things manifested en route or evolved with bands as you grow up. And I just love it. We got some cracking music. From a UK point of view, I don't think there was a massive amount politically going on. I think, in the 60s, the UK was losing some of its old Commonwealth countries. They were getting independence. I think I'm right in saying that what is now South Africa, back in 65 was called Rhodesia, and they gained independence in 65 from the UK. But that's all I know. I'll stick to music on top of that. But in the States, of course, you had some major things going.
Oh, yes. It was a tumultuous time overseas. I mean, it was the start of the Vietnam War. Internationally, the Cold War was going on. And then we've also had locally, the march, the Civil Rights March, from Selma to Montgomery, led by Reverend Martin Luther King. And of course, the death and the assassination of Malcolm X. So one of the things that I know about 1965 is that there was amazing music that really spoke about that year. And
I think that's one of the things that we are learning, although this is the first year we're talking about, and we're going to see, is that how political events and big events in history actually inform some of the music. So there's a lot of anti-war songs, lots of songs which were talking to that time period. And equally, there were some other songs which meant you could just drift away and have a wonderful thought. And you just put your headphones on back in those days, probably, and just listen. I don't know. I'm thinking, were headphones a thing back in 65? I'm sure they were. But yeah, you could actually put the music on and drift away. So we got some great music, Jody, and we got it in
the Spotify list. Yes, we. If you look, you're going to see that we compiled a Spotify list for your enjoyment on the songs that we are discussing on today's show. So enjoy.
Yeah, and Jody, top of that one, 65. You can't ignore the Beatles. You got Help, the remixed or remastered version from the Rubber Soul album, and that was a kind of album that was almost like the Beatles growing up. Instead of being like a short, very short. Actually, most of their songs were very quick singles. This one was more of an album with a theme,
Hmm.
and then today they turned it into a film, didn't they? So
Yep.
so yeah, there's a
Yeah,
lot of different things, but yeah, how
absolutely.
that was certainly a barnstorm.
Absolutely. And I think that brought them to international fame. I even remember my mother, she was a huge Beatles fan. And, the Beatles toured and went to the Philippines, believe it or not.
No
So,
way.
yes. And that period, they're talking 65 and before, my mom was a huge fan of the Beatles. But I could tell you that one of the things is that one thing that you notice about the Beatles back in 1965, and if you look the years before, their hair started growing. And again, it's a reflection of the time. Here we go, where music and style
Mm,
emerge in the 60s, and the freedom of expression. I know that in England, the middle class, youth and folks were trying to articulate their presence. And, one thing that fascinated me was Carnaby Street. So,
mm,
if you look, yes, I mean, like you talk
yeah.
about the mini skirts, the textures, the colors, the ascot scarves. You never see a man with hair growing with an ascot scarf, or still wearing a suit, but wearing different colors. It just blew me away. And I feel that, England, specifically London, had a great, you know, had a great statement with fashion. And
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
open up the world about this is the music and the fashion that we are going to project, you know.
And again, this is how music then follows fashion as well, because you think like 63, 64, it was all the Mersey beat and so that was like Liverpool sound, but then it started to come back down south to London,
Hmm.
and so we had the Stones. I think they grew up in Dartford, if memory serves me correctly, which is a town just outside the east of London. And then, of course, with Carnaby Street, you mentioned, then we had the Who and the Mods, and
Hmm.
very well dressed in snappy suits and lovely haircuts. It was very good. Still long hair, don't get me wrong. But
Long hair at that time, but
yeah,
but did you notice that there was a certain sense of angst, that
mm.
even though they looked refined in their position, that at a late night things are going to get more wild. You know, if you listen to the guitar riffs, like talking about my generation,
Yeah,
the Kinks, the music that they put out at the time, and even like, bands at that time, and even the Stones, okay? It's like there is a sense of like, get up and go, and then I felt, and this is just, how I see music and how this movement in England was a precursor to punk rock, to be quite honest. So, what are your thoughts on that, Nick?
yeah. It was. It was a similar kind of change. The music became way much edgier, and certainly, people could really sing about what was bugging them as teenagers, because a lot of these bands were super young still. So they were still growing up. They were still learning their life lessons. I know the Who. I told you the story my very first job I got when I left school at 16. I was working selling hi-fi, as we used to call it. It wasn't very hi-fi. We joked it was lo-fi, really. I was selling hi-fi in a department store, and next to the hi-fi section was the big singles record shop element. And so, we had all the albums, all the singles, and everything. And there was a box set of the Who. It was their first albums, all the way up to when Keith Moon passed. So it must have been
Oh,
early 70s.
yes.
And these were really raw. I wish today I obviously kept it because it'd be worth a fortune. But I was young. I was 16. I ripped off that cellophane. The fact that they were all numbered made nothing to me. So I played the heck out of them. I mean, I just loved that music. But it was raw, and they could sing it. Don't want you want to hope I die before I get old.
Yep.
I'm
That's
not
talking
sure
about
I
my
can sing that
generation.
right now. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I think that when I look at and I listen to the guitar riffs and the beats, it reminds me of like Iggy Pop,
Yeah, yeah,
the Stooges. So it's like, you could see where, you know, that time really was about expression, and it was about rebellion, and it was about, bringing change. And on that subject matter, as we get now here to the United States, we did have the Civil Rights March led by Martin Luther King.
yeah.
And I'm going to tell you something. There was a lot of solidarity, which is not mentioned in the news a lot. But there were reverends, other reverends that were in support, and even other people of color, believe it or not, who were marching along, to from Selma to Montgomery, and it was for several days. And there, the cops were stopping. But then, when I think about the music at that time, and what's really important to note is that this led to the passing of the bill for blacks to vote, and how that made a monumental change. I think about music like Shotgun, you know,
Yeah,
which is, I think that's actually one of my favorite songs from that year. I think about, the Supremes,
of course. That,
Diana Ross,
yeah, and
Stop in
it's
the Name
incredible.
of Love. You see it say Stop in the Name of Love.
I don't know, you have to do the stop.
Exactly. And then, we also had, the Four Tops, the Temptations, and it was, if you listen to the beat and you listen to, the bass and, the guitar, there is a certain Motown Detroit. Now we're talking Detroit Motown inspiration in
Yeah,
1965. Marvin Gaye was with, Tammy Terrell doing duets, but it really made that year so monumental. And you could not stop but think and resonate. And that thought of resonation about, this was only 50, this was only 60 years ago. It's recent
yeah,
history that, you know, this bill was passed.
yeah. I mean, to a white English guy, I just cannot get my head around the fact that it was only 1960. Well, I don't know when the bill actually passed. Was it 66?
65. It
But
passed in 65.
yeah,
Yes.
then I cannot believe that up until then, coloured people couldn't vote. I just find that incredible. You know,
Hmm.
uh, when you think the USA, home of the free and land of the brave,
Hmm.
but yeah, man, had to do some serious growing up. That is quite incredible.
Hmm. Yeah, and then also at the time here, we were deploying young men,
Mm.
young doctors.
Yeah, to Vietnam. I mean,
Hmm.
again, you think fighting. Hey, we never learn the lessons, do we? Fighting a proxy war, uh, halfway around the world for
Hmm.
for no discernible reason. And now, and the sad thing, I think there was a great song, Paul Hardcastle, in the UK, came out 19.
Yes, 19. That's right. That came out in like what, the earlier mid 80s, I remember.
19. God, incredible. There's a link from him actually to the Spice Girls. We'll cover that in another.
That's going to be on a future episode.
How can we go 65 Vietnam to the
So
Spice
Spice
Girls?
Girls, like,
Only on Needle Drop Nation. We make that
yes.
huge leap. We'll leave you hanging. There's also some great songs. Go back to the Stones. We talked about them last week, and Satisfaction, and yeah, the fact that they wrote some of these songs so phenomenally quickly that I think they said it was 15 minutes in the back of a tour bus. Um,
Wow.
they just wrote one of the most iconic songs on the planet. And you
Oh
think,
my gosh.
imagine if they'd have put some thought into it, but just
And
wouldn't have been the same. That was the thing. And again, because they were touring and spending all that time, it was broadening their horizons. They were seeing music that we just didn't have in the UK. So they were seeing. I mean, particularly I know that a big love of all the blues, Chuck Berry.
mhm.
Um, it's like they,
Bo,
one.
Bo Diddley was a
Oh,
huge influence on the Stones too.
yeah, and it's incredible when you see these amazing guitarists. We were chatting about a lady that I had never heard of until the weekend, Sister Rosetta Than, I think it was.
Tharp. Tharp.
Than.
Sister Rosetta Tharp. Yes.
Oh, that's it. An amazing lady, coloured lady. Her trademark was this long white coat, and she was doing electric guitar just like you would not believe. And this was the clip I saw was 64, so she's touring in 65, and there was just a whole host of white people because of the segregation watching her. But in there was Eric Clapton, Keith Richards, Brian Jones, who was the first Stones guitarist. Chuck Berry, I think, was in the. No, he wasn't in the audience because he was obviously not the right colour. But yeah, there was someone else, another very famous guitarist in there, and it's just incredible. But she was. If you've never seen her, just Google her. I'm going to say Google her on YouTube. No,
Sister
YouTube.
Rosetta Tharp. Yes, Sister Rosetta Tharp
on YouTube, and yeah, it just blew my mind. But again, until 4 or 5 days ago, I had never heard of her at all, and now I'm here singing her praises. But thank God she was influencing all these idols of ours at the time, and I think it's incredible how that music goes. We often talk about the fact that we bring it back to lots of very blues-based.
Absolutely, it's the blues.
When we're talking 65 rhythm and blues, we're talking, right back in proper rhythm and blues.
It's the overarching,
these are the building blocks of music. I think I believe I might have to paraphrase him, but I remember I was reading about Ed Sheeran. One of his latest plagiarism rows. He does keep winning them, in fairness to him. But
there's a lot of artists nowadays that are doing that. It's crazy.
But he was saying, look, the thing is, these are built. These certain chord sequences and note sequences, they are the building block of all music. If you take them away, you haven't got any music. So, you have to. And one of those ones we got in the playlist, My Girl. And that is a pentatonic scale.
Yes.
One day I'll play it on the bass, but it's one of the very first things I learned on the bass was this pentatonic scale. Thinking, wow, I recognise this, and it's do 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 do, and it's like, man, it's My Girl. Something as simple as that. If you can call pentatonic scale simple, yeah, I think you can.
No, but it's so beautiful, to see that, but then again, when people emulate those notes, where do you draw the line between plagiarism and creating music? I mean, honestly.
It's a hard one. It's difficult. There was, we're going a bit off topic, but of course the Beatles have already been, had most of their songs redone, what's the word I'm looking for? But they probably had a lot of plagiarism, and bands have been accused of you just copied the Beatles. Oh yeah, and I can think of several off the top of my head. And it's like, well, yeah, because they're easy because they were using simple chord structures that make really good songs. It's like that's just life,
Yeah, it's I think one of the things is that this is the whole thing about parody, pastiche, and the regurgitation of music, and as far as what do you define as production. So, and nowadays it's again the reproduction. You could even see that with fashion, because if you look at the 60s mod era, like we saw at Carnaby Street, and then you look at now, you see the micro mini again.
Yeah.
It's like, what is then again? How can you identify and define authentic? And that's another conversation.
I know. How deep do you want to go on that one? We have this conversation with Debs quite often because she likes to write. One day she'll actually write a book, I'm sure. But everything that Harry Potter, all these things, they are all regurgitations of a certain theme. And it's,
absolutely. No, I totally agree with you on that.
And it just chimes with a time. And so in 65 these songs were chiming with the times. You've got another one on there, The Sound of Silence.
The Sounds of Silence. Yes, Simon and Garfunkel.
I didn't realise that was as old as it was. But then doing a little bit of research, doing a little bit of research for the show. I didn't realise that Simon and Garfunkel had been singing together since I think they were like 11 or something even earlier, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realise they went back that far. But yeah, hey, great songs.
And that's really fascinating, because when I think about the Song of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel, Blowing in the Wind, and even, believe it or not, California Dreaming by the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
I think about actually, what would soldiers listen to, who were in the Vietnam War. Like, these were the songs. And also people who were very hesitant about the U.S. getting into Vietnam. These songs had made a lot of statement in regards to, what are we in for? And I think this was the first time when the U.S. had actually entered in a war where we actually lost. The end result, we lost a lot of lives. A lot of lives were destroyed, with some soldiers coming back. And it was one of the biggest losses that the United States faced, being involved in a war. But the music really did a telltale sign of the indication of when they saw it on the news, and then they saw it, and they heard it on the radio, the music started really changing, as far as from reflection to protesting. Let's make peace, let's make love, not war.
I'm always a big fan of that one.
And so the thing is that it just becomes really important. And the funny thing is, the Beach Boys, I think, used to tour, naval bases. I don't know if they toured Vietnam, but I could tell you that when I think about the Beach Boys, I think about touring bases and doing concerts too as well. And they're one of the American bands, part of American rock, that we know of.
Yeah, and I think I'm right in saying that, like, in the '65 was when Brian Wilson started to, go within himself, and I think the phrase was he was hearing orchestras in his head, was started to write some great stuff. Another brilliant one, of course, we've got in the playlist as well. A man who I think is just one of the most amazing songwriters, poets, you name it, it's him, Bob Dylan. And so on the playlist today, we've got Tambourine Man, but the Bird singing it from the UK, and of course Rolling Stone, Like a Rolling Stone.
Yes,
one of my favourite songs. I don't know what it is. It's just the easy way it flows, and it's just got the most iconic voice. I think you know when it's him.
No, absolutely. And I feel that even if I was a child listening to Dylan, he also has a certain sense of soothing and introspection. And if I was probably a child at the time, thinking about it and listening to the tunes you had mentioned, it would really help shape the world how I would think about, how I would see the world today, because the music then, I felt, really helped people reflect and look at what's around them even more. And I think that's what's really special about the times in the 60s. It's really how the music reflects and makes people think about, what is going on, and also to take action, to be quite honest. I think that is what's very much key.
Yeah, music linked to action.
Exactly.
Because it's powerful. Music could be a massive motivator.
Absolutely.
It really can. It's a bit like, if you I mean, we're going to see lots of different events and the like, and the speakers would be having, like, in the 80s, they'd have the Rocky music playing to get the crowd going, and then they'd come on, hey! And that's the power of, I'm sure in 1965, that's exactly the same things. You have that force that can motivate you to do pretty much anything. But just chatting about the music, and again, from being in the UK, I didn't particularly think of Simon and Garfunkel and the Beach Boys as singing things about Vietnam, and then I'm thinking back to that amazing film, Good Morning Vietnam,
Mm-hmm.
with Robin Williams. It's been,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just, and I'm thinking, yeah, just listen to the music that's included on Apocalypse Now. It's
Mm-hmm.
just, yeah, that was the soundtrack. It really was.
Yep. Absolutely. And the thing is that and then it really brought in the whole thing about going against the establishment mindset too, as well. And you saw that also in the UK a lot as we get into the deeper into the '60s, and
Yes,
see
we,
how
we
that goes from here to here.
yeah,
And I think in the West, in in the pop culture West world, from here, boom, as we move along.
yeah. I mean, we talked earlier about the fact that we're saying, oh, some of this '65 music, you'd actually relate it, the change to how punk rock evolved,
Hmm.
and that social element. And
Hmm.
that's the thing, these '60s were, the establishment, hated it. Who were these people, being, daring to think, daring to believe in themselves, daring to actually kick the norm and tell other people, hey, it's okay. You don't have to follow what your parents did. I think there
Hmm.
was an element, obviously, post World War Two.
Hmm.
Um, this just had to break free. It was a kind of that's what that movement was all about. The music changed and attitudes changed, and
Hmm.
that's the evolution. So every generation, we were lucky because we're Gen Xers,
Hmm.
has that evolved. That evolved music.
Yes.
And we just get to enjoy it,
Exactly.
and
I
reap the
think
benefits of
the
it.
more rebellious it becomes, the more entertaining it becomes when it comes to seeing that the hair grows longer for the guys,
Yeah,
the skirts go shorter for the girls.
yeah,
And it's just that's something that will always be exciting and intriguing. So I mean, also another thing in 1965, I know this was a very interesting moment, was the assassination of Malcolm X,
oh,
civil rights leader. Of course, he's known to be the leader of the Black Panthers movement. But interestingly enough, I mean, he was shot in the Audubon Ballroom here in New York City. And one thing that I also, which wasn't brought into the press or in the news as much, is that civil rights activist Yuri Kochiyama was there. And when he was shot, she was there. She was actually he was in her arms right before he passed. When at the time on his last breath, she was there with him. Of course, his Malcolm X's wife, Shabazz, and the family acknowledge that point in history. But it's really interesting to see from that there was solidarity with people, color communities who were trying to make change and do social reforms to improve their neighborhoods. And when it came to civil rights, to fight for equality and best social reforms, there was solidarity going on. And I feel that the music embodies that when you listen to it. So, I think that 1965 is a year that is, I would say, the commencement, yes, of the start of Gen Xers, but it's also the commencement of an awakening, of the world in a
yeah,
different way. Yeah. But aren't
definitely.
you, but aren't you excited though? I must say, next episode, um,
Oh,
next year, we're going to be focusing on the year 1966, which is a very important year because someone special,
yeah,
was born that year.
they certainly were, and it's not Jodie, so there must be me. Must be yes. So I'm going to have a special request to have what was number one in the UK hit parade,
Hmm.
as part of the playlist, and I'll tease you with it. It's a Rolling Stones one.
I love that song. That's the time when you hear the sitar.
Yes, that's right. Oh, we're going to be delving into some weird stuff, weird and wonderful
This is
stuff
gonna be
next week.
this is gonna be an epic episode, I must say. You were born at a beautiful year, Nick, I must say. And next week is
I-
gonna be truly exciting. Truly
It is.
exciting.
It's the year that England won the World Cup at soccer,
Mhm.
and have won nothing since. So,
There's always hope. There's always hope.
I might have jinxed them. A great year, 1966. That's next week.
Yes.
Obviously, guys, if you want to let us know if there's any songs in 1966 that you'd like added to the playlist, and we can talk about them. And so do let us know. Contact us.
Yes.
Our producer information is in the podcast show notes, and so you can just contact us and let us know what you'd like us to play, because this isn't just myself and Jodie. This is for all of us Gen Xers. Someone actually pointed out the other day, they said, yeah, you're doing this Gen Xers, but actually you're playing music of people who were baby boomers. I was like, well, yeah, they were baby boomers, but they are playing music for Gen Xers. So I was just trying to think about, we just talked quickly about the rebellion and I'm trying to think, why was, when I was, I don't know, 13, 14, I guess, what was playing in the UK that I was getting more of my rebellion from the Stones and Bob Dylan and the like.
That was 1983, right?
Oh,
I'm thinking
late 70s. I probably should have been punk rock, actually.
punk rock in the late 70s. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's probably 78, 79. I should have been more on the punk rock rebellion.
So we were at this side. We did have punk rock here in the United States. We had CBGBs, literally 15 blocks from here. So it's all good, but we also had disco too.
Yeah, how could you go from disco to punk? That's one for another episode.
That's another episode. The year 1978, 79. We'll focus on that dichotomy.
Yeah, that would be super scary. Might have to do a bumper episode on that one. But next week, though, 1966 is going to be a cracker.
It's going to be epic. All right, everyone. Thank you for watching. And also pay attention that we are also on Spotify and iTunes. We have our podcast broadcasted there as well. And yes, definitely, we'll also put the link in there too as well. Okay?
Oh, yeah, and also on the very last note is, so if you do enjoy this, if you are watching it, do tell other people. And also leave us a good review, if you don't mind. Leave us a good review as well, and that will help us to get the podcast out to more and more people. So, thank you.
All right.
Thank you in advance.
All right. See you all next week.
Take care, guys. Thanks, Jodie, as always.
Thank you, Nick. Oh, you're the best, Nick. Thank you.
You're
You're the best.